Good morning everybody. So in case of 10th class, in our last video we discussed about the evolution process, and in this video we will discuss the process of speciation. First of all, what is this speciation? So this speciation is the process of formation of new species from existing species due to reproductive isolation. And this speciation occurs when the gene pool of a section of a population gets separated from the rest of gene pool of members of that particular population, and then this separated gene pool of that population accumulates variations, and these variations do not allow this separated gene pool to interbreed with their parental population. So finally it results in the reproductive isolation, and this reproductive isolation results in formation of new species, and that process of formation of new species, it is known as speciation. So what can be the different factors which are responsible for speciation? Now we will discuss these factors. So the factors responsible for speciation. So the main factor that is responsible for speciation, we have already told, that is it is reproductive isolation. So the first factor which is responsible for speciation, it is geographical isolation. Geographical isolation. This geographical isolation, it is caused due to some physical barriers. These physical barriers may include the rivers, oceans, mountains, etc. Now, these physical barriers, they result in geographical isolation, and this geographical isolation then results in the reproductive isolation, and this reproductive isolation results in the process of speciation. The second factor which is responsible for speciation is genetic drift. What is this genetic drift? So when the large changes or variations occurs in the frequencies of some genes, then we call that is the genetic drift. So this genetic drift, it is the large variations or changes in the frequencies of genes, and it is also known as right effect. It is also known as right effect. This genetic drift, it results in reproductive isolation of a section of a population from its rest of parental population, and then they results in the reproductive isolation, and reproductive isolation again causes the speciation. Now the next factor that is responsible for speciation are variations. So when the changes in the environment occurs, at that time there are certain organisms which undergoes the favorable changes, the other goes the unfavorable changes. And when the organism undergoes the favorable changes or variations, these variations gets accumulated in this organism and results in reproductive isolation from their parental population, and that's why these variations are also responsible for causing the speciation process. And the last factor that is responsible for speciation are mutations. Now what are these mutations? These mutations are sudden and inheritable changes which occurs in the genetic material of an organism. It may be in the structure of genetic material, it may be in the amount of genetic material, or they may affect the whole chromosome or a part of a gene. So these mutations are sudden, they are random, they are inheritable changes in the amount or structure of genetic material, and these mutations results in reproductive isolation of a section of population from its parental population. So these mutations are also responsible for causing the process of speciation. Now we will discuss our next topic, that is evolution by stages. So as you know, This evolution, it is a complex process and it does not occur either by a single mutation or DNA change. Why? Because we have the complex organs which are controlled by several genes. That's why when this evolution have to occur, it includes several mutations or several changes or variations. Therefore, evolution of new organs always occurs by involvement of the several changes or mutations. For example, if we quote the example of evolution of eyes, So the most primitive or the oldest type of eyes were found, that is most primitive eyes were found in flatworms such as planaria. So most primitive or the oldest type of eyes were found in flatworms such as planaria, and in these planaria these eyes were present in the form of eye spot. They are present in the form of eye spot, and these eyes were sensitive for light. That means they are photosensitive. Now these eyes were, because they are eyes present only in the form of eye spots and they are sensitive to light, that's why they are known as simple eyes. But later on, due to variations and changes in these eyes, these simple eyes were converted into compound eyes through several intermediate stages or through different stages. That means the process of evolution always occurs through stages. What is in this? The evolution of eyes, that is the most oldest or primitive eyes were present in flatworms, that is planaria, and these eyes, in case of planaria, they are known as eye spots, and these eye spots were sensitive to light, that is they are photosensitive, and they are known as simple eyes. But due to variations and changes in these eyes, they converted into compound eyes through several intermediate stages. So the process of evolution, that is the process of conversion of these simple eyes into compound eyes, it occurs through different intermediate stages. That means the process of evolution occurs through stages. The second example of evolution by stages is evolution of feathers. So these feathers or wings, in case of birds, they were evolved due to modification of their forelimbs. And these birds and certain reptiles, they use their feathers for thermoregulation. And later on, these birds, they modified their feathers into wings. They modified their feathers into wings, and these wings are then used for flying process. That's why even here also the evolution of wings from feathers, it is also occurring through intermediate stages. So evolution occurs through intermediate stages. The third example of evolution by stages is evolution by artificial selection, and this evolution by artificial selection we will study in case of cabbage. Which is a vegetable. So this cabbage, it have been used as a food plant for near about last 2000 years, and the artificial selection in cabbage plants resulted in different varieties of cabbage, such as the kale, wild cabbage, kohlrabi, and broccoli. So in case of cabbage, the artificial selection resulted in the formation of large number of varieties from a common cabbage, and it resulted in the formation of different varieties such as kale, the wild cabbage, kohlrabi and broccoli, or all are the varieties of cabbage. Now our next topic is evolution should not be equated with progress, and it is the as such question that was asked in board exams of 10th and in present year. So why this evolution should not be equated with progress? Because this evolution does not mean the elimination of less efficient or the older species, and even it does not mean the formation of new more efficient or complex species, but the continuation of older species depends upon the environmental factors or the environmental changes, and the formation of new species depends on variations, on mutations, on genetic drift and on natural selection. So evolution simply means that the formation of more and more complex organism, that is the existence of more and more complex organism, but along with it the older species also continue to live on this earth surface. So this evolution, it should not be equated with progress. Now our next topic is human evolution. It is the last topic of this chapter. So in this human evolution we will study about that how the different races of humans came into existence. So this human evolution, it have been studied by different methods which are available to science, such as the excavation, exploration, the time dating process and DNA sequencing. So this human evolution, it have been studied by different methods available to science, that is through excavation, through exploration, through time dating and DNA sequencing. And once it was a common belief that the different races of humans such as black race, brown race, yellow race and white race, they belongs to the different species. But due to all these studies, it is now known that all human beings belongs to the same species and they belongs to the Homo sapiens. They belongs to Homo sapiens. And all these different races, that is black race, brown race, yellow race and white race, they all caused or they all formed due to the environmental conditions or the environmental variations or changes. Thank you, students.